She thought it was just a game. The billionaire doctor's shocking condition changed everything. Emily's heart raced as she stared at her computer screen, the clock ticking mercilessly towards midnight. 2 hours of sleep awaited her. But first, the medical trivia game beckoned. Her fingers danced across the keyboard, her mind a flurry of knowledge collected during endless nights of study, peppered with the laughter of her 2 children. Competing against titans like Ethan, the enigmatic doctor, had become her sanctuary, an escape from bills and relentless juggling act of motherhood. "If he only knew," she muttered, her voice just above a whisper. "I'm more than just a single mom with dreams." Yet, when victories bloomed like wildflowers on the leaderboard, she wrestled with conflicting sensations, pride and guilt. The victory over wealthy players felt hollow at times. It amplified that slippery tension between her aspirations and the stark reality of her life. She wanted to believe that a world brimming with possibilities could open for her. But how? Each response challenged her persistence. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Weeks of relentless questioning and doubt melted into a celebratory night as Emily smashed her way to another trivia win, her heart a mixture of elation and dread. She had secured a chance to work alongside Ethan. The thought sent her spinning. Could she really work in a clinic, partner to a man who shrouded himself in luxury? An invitation to a world beyond her grasp. Yet what if it dragged her deeper into the complexities of his life? As the adrenaline faded, the weight of responsibility crashed upon her. Was this what she wanted? Relationships formed in the shadows of screens often felt disconnected. A fear settled in her chest, thick and suffocating. For all his charm, did Ethan harbor the same barriers, invisible chains tethering him in the bustling clinic that awaited them both? Her musings were interrupted by her children's laughter echoing in the hall. They were unwittingly her lifeline, but the fragility within her grew heavier. Torn between aspirations and love, she questioned the ethics of pursuing something with him. Could a woman like her, overwhelmed yet hopeful, ever penetrate the walls he built? The struggle swirled within her, making her feel small, as if every quest for connection might simply shatter in a blinding instant. The nagging worry of Ethan's secrets clawed at her mind. Progress seemed like glacial ice, inching forward, but slipping through her fingers, ungrasped. She sensed him, his presence in the trivia game, a reality she dared not fully confront. Surely he felt the same way. Yet even the thought of him stirred feelings she couldn't name, lingering somewhere at the intersection of admiration and an aching pit of vulnerability. With dreams shimmering just beyond reach, Emily clung to her convictions, the questions sculpting her path. Could she truly face the trembling uncertainty that loomed like a storm before their meeting? Would the truth redefine everything she believed about love, status, and the dreams she chased? A whirlwind of emotion swirled within her as clarity eluded. Only time would reveal the tumult of their crossroads, where dreams might either flourish or crumble. Emily sat at her kitchen table, the scent of leftover pizza lingering in the air, mingling with the sweet notes of her children's laughter. They played in the living room, oblivious to the chaotic thoughts swirling in her mind. She stared at her cold mug of coffee, its once rich aroma now flat and forgotten. The offer from Ethan loomed like an iceberg ahead, striking fear in her heart. It wasn't simply about a job. It was about stepping into a world that felt like a foreign land, one where everyone else seemed to thrive while she felt herself wavering. Each moment replayed in her mind like a film reel. The way Ethan had smirked when she answered a particularly tough question correctly, the way his eyes sparkled with intrigue, as if he saw a part of her that was just waiting to be unleashed. Yet beneath that enticing exterior lay a treacherous uncertainty. Could that spark translate into something concrete? Or was it just a flicker destined to be snuffed out by reality? She forced herself to get up, moving to the living room where her children built a fortress out of colorful blocks. Their laughter was an echo of innocence. Their carefree spirit reminded her of a simpler time, unmarred by doubt. She helped them stack the blocks, her hands working with the same deftness she employed during trivia, yet they felt clumsier now. It was a stark contrast. Her children were fearless in their pursuits, while she grappled with intangible fears that threatened to drown her. Returning to her laptop, She checked the trivia leaderboard once more. There it was. Ethan, at the top once again. A gut-wrenching mixture of admiration and envy gnawed at her. Did victories in the game hold any real meaning for him? Or was it just a diversion, like a shiny object that distracted him from a more troubling reality? With every new revelation about him, her fascination deepened. It wasn't just the prestige or the wealth. It was the potential for connection, something she desperately craved but simultaneously feared. The new reality was inescapable. The closer she matched his pace, the more she realized how unprepared she was to venture beyond the confines of her known world. Bolstered by a new resolve, she scolded herself. She had spent years pushing others away, worried that she would never belong. What if this was her chance? The universe was presenting an opportunity to grow, to develop not just as a mother, but as a professional, as a woman with dreams worth pursuing. Yet who was she kidding? The doubt crept back in as quickly as it had faded. What if her past weighed too heavily upon her, anchoring her to self-doubt? Ethan had every right to dismiss her as another fleeting participant in his life, a mere pawn in his game. It terrified her to confront that possibility, to risk the delicate threads she had barely managed to weave together. Determined to turn her anxiety into action, she began to draft a list of questions for Ethan. Whether about the clinic's inner workings or the dynamics of their professional relationship, she needed answers to face her fear head-on. Each question felt like a stepping stone, guiding her toward the clarity she sought. The clock ticked insistently, reminding her of the next trivia night. This time, she'd prepare not just to compete, but perhaps to take the crucial steps toward a partnership that might lead them both to discover new facets of themselves. But even as her resolve strengthened, her heart raced with the impending confrontation with her own limitations. Finally, she closed her laptop and took a deep breath. The weight of her choice pressed down on her, but there was an undeniable thrill in the air. The moment of revelation was about to arrive. Could she truly bridge the gap between aspiration and reality, or would she let fear dictate her path once more? Emily curled her fingers into a fist, determination igniting within her. Her journey was only beginning, and no matter the outcome, she was ready to step forward. But little did she know, the real challenge awaited her deeper than she could imagine. What lay behind the walls Ethan had built could shift everything she thought she knew about herself. And him. Emily's fingers hovered over her laptop keys, the flickering screen casting an almost ethereal glow against the dim kitchen light. The questions she had meticulously drafted seemed to mock her in their simplicity, a mere veneer over a burgeoning storm of uncertainty. As she reread them, she felt the weight of each word, a burdensome reminder of the vulnerability she was about to expose. How could she interrogate someone as formidable as Ethan when she felt so small? The trivia night loomed, not just as a contest but as an ultimatum. She understood the stakes, and they were higher than she had initially grasped. This wasn't merely about answering questions or proving her worth. It was about breaking barriers she had built around herself over the years, walls that stood fortresses against any inkling of rejection or failure. Each question she asked would be a chisel against those walls, chipping away at the fears that dictated her life. What would Ethan be expecting from her? Was she just another contender in his game, or could she become something more? The potential for connection excited and terrified her simultaneously, a duality that echoed through her very core. She shook her head, pushing aside doubt. This was a chance not just for professional growth but personal transformation. As she arrived at the trivia venue, her stomach twisted in knots. The familiar faces of fellow participants buzzed with excitement, but Emily steered clear of them. Each laugh echoed an invitation, a reminder of the camaraderie she had deliberately neglected. She retreated into her own thoughts, desperate to muster the courage that had begun to feel elusive. The room buzzed with discussions of strategies and past performances. Yet among the chatter, Ethan stood out. There he was, a magnetic force surrounded by competitors, the ease of his laughter both intoxicating and infuriating. Every fiber in her being urged her to turn back, to shield herself from the risk of exposure. But she had stepped too far into this journey to retreat now. Her heart settled into a fierce rhythm, an unyielding drumbeat urging her to face him. "Emily!" Ethan's voice cut through the noise, a beacon amidst the chaos. He turned toward her with an inviting smile that shattered her defenses momentarily. "Ready to dig deep tonight?" She hesitated, caught between the bravado she hoped to project and the uncertainty that threatened to engulf her. "I think I'm ready to learn," she replied, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. With every round of trivia, as questions whizzed by, and she navigated the ebb and flow of banter, she began to experience a dawn of understanding within herself. There was a rhythm to it, a mental synergy forged from each correct answer, and every moment spent teasing back laughter with Ethan while debating trivia facts. She saw echoes of herself not only as a player, but woven into the fabric of this competitive environment. She was asserting herself, her playful intellect revealing bits of strength that had once been buried. The tension in her chest eased, if only slightly. And when a particularly challenging question arose, Ethan's eyes met hers, and it was as though they communicated a silent encouragement. Energy coursed through her. This was not solely about gathering information or besting opponents. This was alive, sparking something within her, a potential she hadn't dared tap into. But as the night progressed, a faint shadow loomed over her thoughts. What would happen if she actually won? If she earned a spot beside him in his world, a place she was wholly unprepared for? The clarity she felt was matched by a rising tide of fear, a reminder that sometimes the prize comes with a price. As the final question approached, Emily's heart raced, not from the thrill of the game, but from the realization that she stood at the precipice of change, a moment that could unravel her carefully constructed identity. Staring into the unknown, she confronted the very question of who she wanted to be. The moment of revelation hung thick in the air, and with a depth of conviction, she began to weave her path forward. Could she truly embrace this metamorphosis, or would she withdraw at the last moment, letting fear guide her once more? The answer rested just beyond the horizon of the impending question, and as the night zeroed in on its pinnacle, another realization took its form. This wasn't just about winning a game, it was about claiming her narrative as her own. The tightening in her chest took on a new quality as the last question loomed. There was no denying her moment was here, the stage set not just for competition, but for an unveiling of herself, a self long concealed beneath layers of self-doubt and lingering apprehension. As the final question was announced, the world around her blurred. Emily inhaled sharply, centering her focus on the crisp texture of the card before her. It was then that she heard Ethan's voice cut through the fog. "Just remember, the answer isn't as important as how you approach it," he encouraged, his tone reassuring but firm. Those words rippled through her, causing her to question not just the answer to the trivia, but the very nature of her being. Was her worth determined by a single night, by a single answer? As the opposing team shouted their guesses, sparks of inspiration lit a fire within her. Maybe this was the pivot point, the crucible in which her self-perception could be recalibrated. She could hear the numbers ticking down, each second a thrum against the backdrop of her accelerated heartbeat. Would she choose to rise above expectations, or default to her instinctive hesitance? She hesitated for just a moment longer, contemplating the many ways this choice could cascade into her life moving forward. The answer materialized. Her voice rose above the noise. "I think it's—" The words flowed out, steady and resolute. As the crowd erupted in cheers, she realized the answer was right. But in truth, it was the bravery of articulating a thought that signified a crucial breakthrough. The weight of expectation had shifted, not just inward, but outward as well. The eyes of the audience, including Ethan's, glimmered with a newfound respect. It made the moment both exhilarating and terrifying at once. Her team erupted into celebration, but the joy felt strangely muted beneath a tide of deeper introspection. In that moment of victory, a flicker of new questions ignited. What was this personal recognition worth if it was built on fleeting moments of applause? She knew now she was more than another player in the game. Yet she couldn't ignore the faint whisper of doubt lurking in her mind. What came next? As Ethan moved closer, the camaraderie they had cultivated over the evening made her pulse quicken. He grinned, his demeanor radiating warmth and affirmation. "You handled that brilliantly," he said, his voice laced with sincerity. "You're far more capable than you let on." The compliment caused a flush in her cheeks, accompanied by a rush of vulnerability that held her in place. "Thank you, but I was just following your lead," she replied, her humility veiling her triumph. "No, it was you who found the courage to speak up. Don't underestimate your potential," he responded, his intensity unwavering. It was more than an encouraging remark. It bore the weight of a challenge, a beacon lit to guide her away from retreat. As the party waned, Emily navigated a new dilemma: how to maintain this momentum of self-discovery without retreating to her shields. She had claimed a part of her identity, a piece that glittered with unfamiliar promise. Yet the battle was only beginning. Ethereal confidence achieved on one night didn't guarantee strength in the light of the following day. She needed to establish more than just momentary victories. She needed to solidify them into the very fabric of who she was becoming. That night, as she stood among the remnants of celebration, something solidified inside her. The choices she would make moving forward would require more growth, another layer of stepping out from the shadows she so often inhabited. The challenge now begged her to ask, how would she respond to this new chapter beckoning her? Tomorrow could unfold in myriad ways, but Emily knew with clarity that the thrill of further questions ignited her spirit. The path before her could steer her closer to a broader horizon or plunge her back into fear, an escalating tension she couldn't ignore. And in that moment, Emily made a decision. She wouldn't stop here. The first step awaited, and the anticipation of what lay beyond urged her forward. But could she truly navigate the turbulent waters of her aspirations without being swept away by her old fears? As her eyes settled on Ethan, conviction surged. She was ready to embrace unfinished stories of her own. The din of laughter and chatter faded as Emily stepped outside into the cool night air. The stars sparkled above, a scattered map of possibilities that mirrored the tumult within her. She clenched her fists, pretending the chill of the breeze could erase the remnants of doubt that lingered on her skin. Her heart raced, not from anxiety, but exhilaration. This was her awakening. In the solitude, she allowed herself a moment to reflect on the evening. Just hours earlier, she had stood paralyzed by fear, yet now, a flicker of realization ignited within. She had faced the crowd, her voice louder than any inner critic. Why hadn't she seen this before? The physical sensations of triumph had slipped into a deeper understanding of her will. She wouldn't just settle for the next trivia night. She wanted to cultivate this sense of strength, to feel its roots grow solid within her. As she made her way back to her apartment, her mind raced with introspection. Each step felt deliberate, each sidewalk cracked an anchor to her aspirations. Emily considered the implications of engaging more fully with life, and the thought both thrilled and terrified her. She had been content to linger in the background, quietly observing and supporting others. But now, she envisioned stepping into the light, not just to bask in it, but to shine her own light emanating from within. What would that look like? She mused aloud. Would it mean taking bold risks or exploring uncharted territories of her intellect and capabilities? Her confidence had been just a breath away from shifting into something greater, a yearning for connection with her deeper self, untainted by the voices of her past. From her bag, she pulled out a notebook filled with ideas and sketches, fragments of her dreams waiting for witness. Maybe it was time to flesh those out, to explore her passions in a structured manner. The first page, filled with energetic swirls of ink, was a list of interests she had never fully pursued. Graphic design, creative writing, public speaking, each were to tap on the dormant potential she had long resigned to daydreams. Determined, she made a plan. Perhaps she could start by joining a local writing group or volunteering for public speaking workshops. Each small step would be a deliberate shattering of the glass barriers she had constructed, ensuring they would never confine her again. The transformative joy of that night echoed in her thoughts. With every word she scribbled down, she felt herself gaining momentum. Yet self-doubt still simmered. What if she failed at the workshop? What if others noticed her hesitations? Would vulnerability only pave the way for ridicule? She had to confront this nagging uncertainty head-on. In doing so, she could create a space for growth. Emily knew she must embark on this journey not just for victories, but for exploration and for the courage to embrace her truth, no matter how daunting. The next day, with purpose coursing through her veins, she sent an email inquiring about the writing group. Her finger hovered over the send button, the final act of commitment. As she pressed it down, a wave of exhilaration washed over her. "That's it, Emily," she whispered to herself. "One step forward." That evening, as she scrolled through her emails, a response from the group manager lit up her screen. They welcomed her invitation to join. A surge of excitement mingled with fear, a heady cocktail of emotions. But she had made her choice, and it wasn't just about joining the group. It signified a declaration to herself, to pursue fulfillment, to cultivate resilience against doubts. This was her moment of newfound agency, a thread pulled in her narrative that hinted at a richer tapestry yet to be woven. Just as she began drafting a response, a shadow fell across her path. Looking up, she was met not with the fresh air of her dreams, but with the formidable gaze of someone who had always made her question her worth. The kind of presence she had hoped to escape. The tumultuous undercurrent of her resolve shifted. "Emily!" The voice slithered out, a mere whisper from her past that now simmered with the echoes of competition and past hurt. I didn't expect to see you here. Have you come to play in the big leagues? Her heart raced, not just from surprise, but from the challenge buried in the question. She could either cower or confront. This was it, the crossroads she had feared, a chance to fully embody the self she was unveiling. Actually, I'm here to create my own game, she replied with a newfound steadiness. The words resonated in the silence, a soft yet unmistakable thunderclap of declaration. Would she withstand this new test, or would old fears claw their way back to the surface? Emily's pulse quickened, not from fear, but from a burgeoning resolve she hadn't anticipated. Standing in front of her, Mark was the embodiment of everything she had tried to overcome, the weight of past insecurities and the echo of doubt, all wrapped in an unimpressed smirk. The pulsating energy of the evening washed over her, solidifying her intent. Creating your own game? He chuckled, the sound menacingly smooth, ricocheting off the brick walls around them. Interesting choice. But let's be real, this world doesn't play nice with dreamers. For a moment, Emily wavered, questioning the weight of her declaration against the gravity of his presence. Yet deep inside, the flicker of self-belief ignited. The air felt electric. Facing him meant confronting the remnants of her past, the defeated part of herself that would often succumb to doubt under his scrutinizing gaze. Yes, she grappled for the right words. Dreamers can craft the rules. It's not about playing nice. It's about playing well and with purpose. Mark crossed his arms, that knowing look etched into his face. If only that were the way things operated. But don't worry, I'll be here to remind you of the harsh realities when it gets too real. With that, he turned, leaving her standing in the half-light. His words clung to the air, a bitter reminder of the insecurities she loathed. But their weight could no longer pin her down. The resolve that coursed through her, ignited by her earlier declaration, felt so much stronger now. This wasn't merely a moment, it was a juncture in her career and life. She could have crumbled under the weight of his doubt, but the thought sparked an undeterred fire within her. With newfound clarity, she headed back into her apartment, each step filled with purpose. Mark's dismissal would not dictate her pace. She would chart her own course, navigating through the waves of uncertainty and excitement alike. She deliberated over her evening's agenda. Yes, she would join the writing group, but she wouldn't stop there. Underneath the initial layers of vulnerability was an actionable plan, a web of connections she could weave through her community, each thread strong and lined with intention. The next day, she researched more opportunities, workshops on public speaking, forums for graphic design critique, even launched seminars for aspiring writers. Each idea unfolded, vibrant and brimming with potential. She envisioned herself confident, standing in front of an audience, sharing her words unapologetically. But as she delineated her goals, a creeping thought drifted in, attempting to obscure her clarity. Would these pursuits reveal her weaknesses rather than strengths? Every intensive interaction became an opportunity riddled with pressure. What if the world rejected her voice, not just Mark? Into this storm of thoughts, she reached for her notebook, flipping through the swirling ink that had captured her emerging aspirations. Each sketch of possibility transformed into an anchor, grounding her even as the tide of fear ebbed and flowed. Rereading her intentions, she highlighted a passage. Today, I choose to define my own success. But would that success stand resilient in the face of vulnerability? The sheer act of putting herself out in the open felt like an immense leap into a blazing sky. With each stroke of her pen, she shunned the familiar terrors, choosing instead to nurture the voice that would amplify her vision for herself. She would seek supportive measures within this creative endeavor, perhaps connecting with other creators who had traversed similar paths. Drenching herself in affirmation, she prepared her first piece for the writing group, a blending of personal explorations and fantasies, a crossroad of ambition and reflection. Yet just as she finished drafting, an email flashed across her screen. Another link, another chance. A public speaking event, promising an audience and a platform. Emily's heart raced again, but this time the fear was laced with enthusiasm. She hesitated only for a moment before clicking the link and registering. It was a commitment, a leap of faith that would inject her with the vigor needed to keep her momentum alive. But as she filled in the form, the familiar echo of Mark's voice wrapped around her thoughts. The harsh realities. Would she falter when the spotlight shined? With a deep breath she clicked, submit, and felt the tether of doubt begin to fray. But uncertainty wasn't done with her yet. A notification from the writing group pinged, prompting her to attend their first meeting sooner than expected. Anxiety tangled with excitement. She had made her decision, and now she was faced with the imminent test. Would she allow herself to be seen, or would the shadows of doubt drag her back? The night of the meeting drew closer, leaving her abuzz with nervous energy. As she prepared notes and practice runs, Mark's taunting lingered faintly, receding beneath the tide of her newfound determination. But on the cusp of stepping into this new chapter, she realized something monumental. True self-assurance was rooted not in the absence of fear, but in the willingness to confront it. The moment pulsed closer, a prelude to the significant shake-up she'd anticipated since stepping outside into the cool night air. With every heartbeat, she was undeniably moving forward. Just before sleep claimed her, a thought crystallized in her mind. What will happen when I face them? The answer brewed on the horizon, ready to unfold in ways she would never anticipate. The night arrived, cloaked in a fragile veil of uncertainty that intensified Emily's anticipation. The meeting was a mere walk-away. Yet, with every step she took, the doubts clawed at her insides, like tendrils of smoke spiraling out of control. She rehearsed her lines in her mind, battling the urge to turn around and retreat into the safety of obscurity. This was more than a writing group. It was a declaration. Each member an illustration of the talent she aspired to foster within herself. The flickering streetlights cast long shadows, echoing the internal struggle she faced. Would they see the ambition shining behind her eyes, or would her insecurities overshadow it? As she pushed through the door, her breath caught in her throat. The atmosphere buzzed with a mix of anxious energy and camaraderie. Faces turned to her, some curious, others welcoming. She smiled, forcing her feet to move forward even as the shadows of doubt loomed behind her. It was now or never. The organizer, a tall woman with striking turquoise hair, introduced her. "This is Emily. She's just joined us and is excited to share her writing." Applause erupted, but it felt distant, muffled by the deafening thrum of her heartbeat. It didn't escape her that applause was a double-edged sword. It could uplift or trigger the weight of expectation. As the evening progressed, Emily listened intently. Each piece shared by the participants was raw and vulnerable, revealing fragments of their creators. Listening to their stories stirred something within her, a sense of belonging she hadn't anticipated. Each performance was a testament to risk-taking, a demonstration that strength often emerged through vulnerability. When her turn approached, she gripped the edges of her notes, trying to anchor herself. But then, Mark's voice resonated in her mind, reminding her of the harsh realities. Would she feel the sting of rejection? Or worse, apathy? As her name was called, she stepped forward, pushing through the suffocating wave of fear that threatened to swallow her whole. "I wrote this piece from a very personal place," she began, her voice steadier than anticipated. She could feel their eyes on her, probing and anxious, waiting for every word as she unraveled her narrative woven with threads of hope and realization. As she spoke, her initial fear transformed into an electrifying force. The words flowed like a current, punctuated by her own laughter and the occasional gasp from the audience. This was no longer about just exposing her vulnerability. It was about embracing who she was becoming, a creator unafraid to showcase her truth. When she finished, silence hovered for a heartbeat before applause erupted. It was uproarious, genuine, and it broke down the walls she'd built around herself. Relief washed over her as smiles broke out among the group, and for the first time, she felt the validation she had pursued for so long. Yet amidst this triumph, doubt lingered like an uninvited guest. Would they accept her as one of them, or would her words erase her presence? A fellow writer approached with enthusiasm sparking in her eyes. "Your piece was profound. It's evident you have a story to tell. Perhaps we could collaborate on something together?" The warmth in her tone spread through Emily, igniting a flame of excitement. As conversations began to swirl around her, Emily sensed a shift within. This meeting wasn't just about sharing words. It was a collective weaving of aspirations and ambition. Each discussion held the promise of connection and growth. The group was not a threat, but a lighthouse guiding her through uncharted waters. Emboldened by her experience, Emily clasped her notebook tightly against her chest. She would engage more, seek guidance, and explore the myriad talents housed in those welcoming walls. But as the meeting drew to a close, and the faces began to dissolve back into the night, a new email pinged on her phone. It was a follow-up about the public speaking event, reminding attendees of a workshop the next day, one that promised to sharpen the skills needed for effective communication. The juxtaposition of her initial dread and newfound exhilaration momentarily stalled her. This was another opportunity to embrace the potential that lay before her. But buried deep in her thoughts was the nagging question, What if the harsh realities resurfaced? What if she fell back into the old traps of inhibition and self-doubt? As she weighed the options laden with vulnerability, she sensed a pivotal moment looming. Would she seize this chance and deepen her commitment to personal growth, or would she allow fear to dictate her course? With the shadows of doubt still shifting in the background, Emily took a breath, resolute. The decision awaited her, precariously hanging between ambition and fear. Would she step forward into the light once more? Emily stood at the crossroads of her self-doubt and newfound ambition, the light from her phone illuminating the weight of the choice in front of her. The workshop loomed in her mind, a symbol of potential growth, a step further into a world she had only begun to explore. Yet the nagging echo of Mark's cynicism lingered. Would this be another moment of vulnerability, stripped bare only to expose her fears? She could feel the heaviness of the moment pressing down on her, each breath a reminder that she was still tethered to her hesitations. But the applause from the previous evening resounded in her ears, a melodic reminder of the acceptance she had felt. What could possibly change if she confronted her fears rather than retreat? A plan began to take form, albeit tentative. Emily could not afford to entertain self-doubt any longer. It was time to propel herself forward, albeit with trembling steps. The workshop could provide her with valuable tools, strategies to amplify her voice, and perhaps even confront the specters of inadequacy that followed her. Yet despite the allure of self-improvement, apprehension gripped her tightly. What if she faltered among seasoned speakers? She took action, registering for the workshop with a singular determination. A newfound focus cleared the haze of uncertainty shrouding her thoughts. Making the commitment became more than just signing up. It transformed into a pact with herself, a promise to step out of her comfort zone, to allow the new Emily to emerge. The next morning, anticipation mingled with dread as she arrived at the venue. A line of eager participants snaked around the corner, each person pulsing with a whir of potential and trepidation that mirrored her own inner chaos. As she entered the room, the atmosphere thickened with concentrated energy. It buzzed with whispers of ambition and phrases of encouragement. Yet the apprehension lingered, clawing at her confidence layer by layer. The session began, and the instructor, a poised woman with an effortless command of the room, knew just how to pull everyone in. Emily couldn't help but notice the way the others engaged, their voices steady and resonant, illuminating the fearlessness she yearned to embody. One participant stood out, launching into a compelling story that gripped everyone's attention. Inside, Emily wrestled with insecurities. Why was it so easy for them, while she struggled to find her footing? The throbbing pulse of self-doubt twisted and turned in her thoughts. But she recognized that this was an opportunity, a moment where her discomfort could fuel her growth. When the group broke into smaller discussion segments, Emily found herself sharing her own thoughts. It started with a whispered acknowledgement of her fears, but as she spoke, something shifted. The more she expressed, the more she felt acceptance from her peers. Each nod and encouraging response chipped away at the fortress of doubt that had long confined her. Momentum coursed through her veins, weakening the grip of self-critique. As the workshop progressed, Emily was tasked with leading a brief presentation on a topic of her choice. A surge of panic threatened to paralyze her, but the instructor's voice echoed in her mind. The only way to improve is through practice. This was it, the true test of her resolve. Calling upon the energy that had sparked during her last performance, she crafted her presentation quickly. The material flowed, and she focused on what she had learned about storytelling. When it was her turn, she stood tall. With each word, the once institutional barriers of doubt began to fade. The support from her peers transcended mere acknowledgement. It became a blanket of strength. As she finished, applause surged once again, this time rising from a place within her that had long been dormant. The validations redefined her experience, filling the spaces left barren from too much self-doubt. But as Emily stepped down, exhilaration fought against the wariness still lurking inside her. There was a subtle mental turmoil. What now? Emily had begun to embrace the artist within, yet that very journey came with an unfiltered awareness of vulnerabilities and potential failures. With fresh ideas sparkling in her mind, the question emerged. Could she sustain this momentum, or would it wither when faced with the harsh realities once more? Standing in the light of her small but significant victory, she felt the weight of the next decision press upon her. The potential for a new project, a collaboration, a chance to blend her personal journey with her newfound voice awaited. Would she be bold enough to pursue it? Deep down, a thirst for exploration intensified, but the echoes of apprehension surged again. Would she truly take the leap, or retreat into the shadows for safety once more. The horizon of possibilities stretched ahead, but the path was laden with uncertainty. Would she find the courage to follow through? Emily left the workshop with her heart racing, a complex mix of exhilaration and anxiety coursing through her veins. The applause echoed in her mind, but overshadowing that was the looming question: what to do next? The possibilities felt both enticing and daunting. Her recent triumph felt like a fragile balloon, beautiful yet susceptible to any unforeseen pinprick of doubt. As she navigated through the throngs of people exiting the building, her thoughts spiraled around the new project she had envisioned. What if she launched a blog? A space where she could merge her love for storytelling with her experiences of transformation. The concept had sparked during her presentation, and it thrilled her. But alongside that thrill lurked the specter of self-doubt. What if nobody read it? What if she couldn't maintain the momentum? Once home, she paced her apartment, grappling with the mixed signals in her mind. She stared at her reflection in the hallway mirror. Was this the Emily ready to take on the world? Or just a flicker of something that might fade when exposed to the harsh light of reality? In an impulsive move, she opened her laptop and began typing. The words flowed, pouring out the excitement and trepidation that had tightly wound inside her. Each stroke on the keyboard transformed her fears into a narrative rather than silent prisoners of her mind. The blank document became a canvas of possibility, and for a moment she felt invincible. But just as quickly, doubt began to creep in. What if her voice wasn't worthy of being heard? What if her thoughts went unappreciated? The weight of those questions pressed down heavily, like an unseen hand pushing her back into the shadows. She slammed the laptop shut, frustration burning within her. This battle was exhausting. Why was it so hard to reconcile her ambitions with the fear of failure? The emotional seesaw made her doubt her commitment to self-growth. It was one thing to share her fears in a supportive workshop room. It felt exponentially more daunting to unleash them into the world. Taking a deep breath, she recalled a piece of advice from the instructor. Don't fear authenticity. That lingering reminder ignited something inside her, nudging against the hesitation that threatened to steal her potential away. Perhaps this was a necessary step. Perhaps sharing her journey could motivate others in similar shoes and create a belonging that she craved. With a renewed focus, she opened her laptop once more, determined to outline her first entry. As she typed, something clicked. The barriers she believed defined her were melting away. She acknowledged her insecurities openly, crafting them into the very fabric of her writing. The walls surrounding her vulnerabilities began to dissipate, replaced by a burgeoning sense of empowerment. But progress isn't linear. Just as she started to feel grounded, negativity blindsided her. Mark's cynical remarks resurfaced. You think you can just declare you're an artist? The voice of doubt morphed into a familiar face, haunting her resolve. Was he right to scoff at her aspirations? Moments of triumph rarely come without the shadow of criticism. Emily wrestled with the desire for validation and the need for independence from external approval. Would she forever be haunted by the opinions of others? Or could she redefine what success meant on her own terms? Her thoughts spiraled into a deeper rabbit hole of reflection, challenging her to confront the reality of self-imposed limitations. As midnight approached, Emily shut down her laptop, fatigued but invigorated. While she felt lighter after the catharsis of writing, deeper questions remained. Was this merely a transient moment of clarity? Her heart hammered in anticipation as a new daily commitment emerged in her mind. Instead of treading water, she would commit to consistent writing, facing whatever darkness lay in wait. However, would consistency bring light, or would it efficiently unveil deeper layers of her self-doubt? She wrestled with that unsettled feeling right before sleep enveloped her, teasing the edge of possibility yet again. The next morning, a new decision awaited. Would she risk the vulnerability of sharing her writing with others? Or would she retreat back into the safety of solitude, content with her private victories? The tension hung in the air, an electric charge sparking the edge of her resolve. Emily stood in front of the mirror, the soft morning light streaming through the curtains and illuminating her resolve. It had been weeks since she had begun sharing her thoughts publicly, and yet she felt as if she had only just scratched the surface of her potential. The blogging experience had morphed into an unexpected voyage of self-discovery, enabling her to confront her vulnerabilities while connecting to a broader audience. But it wasn't merely about seeking validation, it was about embracing the fullness of her identity. The weight of the previous night's writing session hung heavily in the air, where doubt had threatened to steal her drive. But today was different. Today she felt resolute. The memory of her last post, which had captured a surge of positive feedback, lingered in her mind like a thrilling promise. Readers had engaged with her story as she spoke unabashedly about her journey, her changes, and even the shadows of fear that clung to her. There was a validation she hadn't anticipated. It was more than just numbers. It was human connection, an authentic response to the vulnerability she dared to spotlight. Determined not to fall back into complacency, she opened her laptop. The blank screen awaited her, but instead of feeling paralyzed, a flood of ideas rushed in. She had built momentum, and now it was time to harness it. With every keystroke, she vividly described her latest experience at the public speaking workshop. Recalling the moment she stood in front of an audience, she captured the mix of fear and exhilaration, the event where she had discovered her voice through both triumph and tribulation. As she poured her heart onto the screen, she was empowered by the knowledge she had already shared with others who needed to hear her story. Empathy was lining the pages, and it ignited something fierce within her: confidence. When she reached the end of her post, she felt lighter. This was not an act of mere self-expression, but a powerful proclamation of her journey. Emily pressed publish and sat back in her chair, a heady mix of anticipation and energy flooding through her. This felt monumental, not just the act of writing but the embodiment of who she was becoming. Later that day, as she glanced at the influx of notifications on her blog, her heart swelled. People were responding, sharing stories of their own challenges, encouraging her, engaging with the material she had put forth. Recognition began to manifest, transforming the once nervous anticipation she associated with vulnerability into an empowering acknowledgement of her capability and strength. The phone chimed. It was a message from Ethan. Their connection had blossomed outside of trivia nights, deepening into a budding friendship that inspired her. He had been following her blog, and his message contained a heartfelt compliment about her writing journey. His words acted like an affirmation, further propelling her toward self-belief. She savored it not so much because it came from him, but because it spoke to her growth. She no longer sought validation from his status, but recognized the value of her own narrative. As weeks passed, Emily continued to write and engage with her audience. Each blog post sharpened her voice, and she noticed a ripple effect in her life. She began exploring local literary events and public speaking opportunities, each explorative step riddled with its own set of challenges, yet no longer suffocated by fear. She allowed the warmth of her newfound confidence to spread to other areas of her life. The brief interactions with strangers at coffee shops transformed into spontaneous conversations, where she shared bits of her journey. She no longer felt the need to shroud herself in insecurities. Instead, there was an openness that beckoned connections. Friends noticed her change, rallying to support her ventures. Weeks turned into months, and for the first time, Emily felt like a steady ship navigating unruffled waters. Uncertainty still lurked, but it lost its overwhelming grip. Her blog morphed into a community of shared resilience, where she and her readers prompted each other to embrace their imperfections while pursuing growth. Small victories shaped the landscape of her confidence, cementing the transformation of her identity. It culminated with an invitation that landed in her email. A local community center, inspired by her blog, reached out to invite her as a featured speaker for an event centered on personal growth and storytelling. A palpable thrill rolled through her. Standing up in front of an audience and sharing her journey would no longer strike fear. It would be an opportunity. As she prepared for that day, she felt a sense of purpose coursing through her veins, tangible enough to be a driving force. She was not simply sharing her story. She was proving that voice and vulnerability could intersect to illuminate paths for others walking similar journeys. Stepping onto that stage wouldn't just mark a professional milestone. It would symbolize an overhauling of her narrative, a story of transformation in full bloom. Emily gazed in the mirror one last time that morning, taking in the woman she had become, a confident storyteller, a resilient creator, and above all, an individual unafraid to bridge the gap between ambition and reality. The woman she once believed could not rise was now standing tall in her own truth, ready to seize every opportunity ahead. This was her moment, the culmination of growth blossoming from intention, the realignment of aspiration with action. This journey, one she had traveled with vulnerability as her compass, validated that she could conquer anything life threw her way. Now, it was time to thrive. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.